Hey, it's Griselle again. How's it going? Today we're going to be talking about Loki episode 2. Now, as a super quick disclaimer, if you haven't watched my first video, you know what, I hate to do this. I hate to be one of those people who plugs their own content, but honestly, a lot of the things that I covered in the first video, where I break down the first episode, are overarching points that apply to the entire series as opposed to the episode. They talk about things like casting choices and tone. So that's stuff that I'm not really going to be repeating here. I would recommend that you go watch that first if you haven't already. I'll leave the link I'll leave the link in the description box below, and go check that out. Unsurprisingly, I'm a little behind on this. This is just me filming at the last moment just before episode 3 drops. So, you know what? At this point, I'm resigned to being just a horribly inept YouTuber. We're gonna go with it. So let's start with a quick episode recap before I actually delve into the review. So this episode opens with a medieval Renaissance fair in 1985, where a bunch of Minutemen from the TVA arrive with the intention of apprehending the dangerous time variant Loki, or Lesser Loki, as the real Loki dubs him. And really what ensues is a cool fight scene, choreographed to Bonnie Tyler's I'm Holding Out for a Hero. We see one of the patrol officers getting abducted by Lesser Loki, along with their timeline reset charge thing. Then we see Mobius and the real Loki arrive on the scene to investigate what just went down. Loki has agreed to work with the TVA with the promise of a meeting with the timekeepers on the table. Under the guise of helping them, Loki really tries to pull one over the TVA, but Mobius calls him out. Then what happens is we find Loki now confined to a library where he has been tasked with studying the past exploits of the time variant to figure out where they're going next and where they're going to be. Through a really cool brainwave, number one, he discovers that Asgard was destroyed in the sacred timeline, or the original timeline. Asgard was destroyed, but he also finds out that the perfect place for a time variant to hide is in a time just before an apocalypse. Because even if you mess around with the timeline, you create disturbances, they aren't really picked up by the TVA, because that timeline is going to be destroyed shortly after. Loki conveys as such to Mobius through a really weird, long-winded salad metaphor. And then to test it out, they actually go to Pompeii, where Loki shows a really playful side to him. They test it out, they figure out that the apocalypse hypothesis is correct, and through a candy bar clue that was revealed at the start of the episode, they figure out that the time variant is going to be in the year 2050 in Alabama at a doomed department store, which is being ravaged by what seems like a hurricane and a flood. Loki does come face to face with the variant, who is revealed to be a lady. Now, bear in mind, the TVA, earlier on in this episode, the TVA did mention that they have been tracking down various variant Lokis, all of which had slightly different appearances and abilities from the main one. So this one, the fact that she's a lady, comes out of left field. Blowing past that, I did a little research after I watched the episode, and turns out this is a tip of the hat to the comics, where I found two possible explanations, one of which was in a 2008 comic. There was apparently a scene where Loki shapeshifted into a female version of himself, and he stayed like that for a couple years. And then the second reference that I found was in the Spanish dub of Loki episode 2, they had credited the actress who played Lady Loki as Sylvie. Now Sylvie, after a little looking into, Sylvie is a character from the comic books who awoke one day to find that she had been imbued with magical Asgardian powers by Loki. She proceeds to join the Young Avengers, and later on turns into a villain known as the Enchantress. Now that's again a tip of the hat to her main powers in this episode, which seems to be enchanting people or possessing people. which she does. She possesses like 3 or 4 people and kicks Loki's ass before revealing her true form. Anyway, what happens next? Yes, so Loki then tries to recruit her to wreak havoc with him and also seize power from the Timekeepers and overthrow the TVA. She seems anything but interested. She proceeds to bomb the sacred timeline, branches it off into hundreds of tangential timelines, and then disappears into a portal. Loki follows her into the portal just as Mobius reaches the scene. Roll the credits. Alright, now getting to the fun part, which is the actual review. Yay! I would rate this episode a 6.5 out of 10. Now, true fans will remember that I rated the first episode a 6. I was on the fence about a lot of things. With this one, as each new character reveal happens, as each new time travel rule is revealed as to how timelines work in this universe, and as we learn more and more about the TVA and its environs, I get more and more engrossed. I now want to get into a couple things that I particularly liked about this episode. Just realized my hair is an absolute mess in this. Sorry. But yeah, let's get into a couple things that I really liked about this episode. First off, I really liked the opening scene, Bonnie Tyler's I'm Holding Out for a Hero. I actually watched this episode with a friend, and that's the only time I've really heard her genuinely gushing about anything in this TV series so far. In this one, we also see a really playful side of Tom, or of Loki rather, as opposed to his usually characteristically sedate self that we've seen in the movie franchise. I cited that as not a good thing in the first episode, but I'm sort of eating my words right now because I'm getting into it. I like it, especially the scene in Pompeii where him and Mobius are trying to meddle with the timeline to see what they can get away with, and Tom, aka Loki, unleashes this cartload of goats on the well-meaning civilians.
Loki! Loki! Go! Be free, my horn friends, be free!
And also tells him that him and Mobius are time travelers and the civilians are all gonna die because the volcano behind him is gonna erupt. Tom, the first rule about Fight Club is you don't talk about Fight Club. Another delayed realization that I had was Miss Minutes, the little artificial intelligence cartoon mascot that the TVA uses to train new recruits and especially teach Loki the ways of the TVA. She was actually voiced by voice actor extraordinaire Tara Strong. Very recently, I've really been getting into Tara and Grey Delisle. I've watched a bunch of their interviews, and yeah, that was a really welcome realization on my part. Now, I touched upon this earlier where I said initially I wasn't really digging the whole tone of the series, and that it was very un-Marvel-like. It reminded me of a cross between your a sci-fi like Tenet crossed with a space fantasy like Star Wars or Ender's Game, right? But if you forget that this is really a Marvel property and let yourself get engrossed, it's very easy to really enjoy yourself. A couple things that are hooks for me personally are when new rules are revealed about time travel, as I mentioned before. So one of the questions posed by Loki in this episode was, to delay a bad event happening, why can't we just go back in time just before the event happened and stop it? I think Mobius replied something to the extent of, we need a certain timeline to grow and evolve and change on its own before we can interfere. So as the entire universe is getting enlightened and we reach all the furthest corners of how things work, I'm getting really into it. A lot of other side information is dropped, like the Timekeepers, for example, are especially monitoring the capture of this variant for reasons unknown as of right now, even though the TVA has worked to take down multiple variant Lokis in the past. Curious to know how that's going to pan out and the reasons for that. Another thing that was brought to the surface was the question of free will. Mobius mentioned that the Timekeepers are working tirelessly to untangle the epilogue of the sacred timeline, to which Loki responds, well, then what about free will? Are we all just heading toward a foregone conclusion? Is this all premeditated? Is this already prophesized? What about free will? So a lot of unanswered questions as of this episode. And really in this one, we see Loki's duplicity, his duality emerge, as on the one hand, he purports to work with the TVA to take down the variant on the promise that he gets an audience with the timekeepers. On the other hand, he's also trying to bamboozle them and pull one over them at every chance he gets to just seize power all willy-nilly. And through it all, we see this burgeoning bromance between Mobius and Loki. So very interested to see how all of that pans out. Speaking of bromance, we see a little bonding with Mobius and Loki, where after Pompeii, Mobius reveals that he wants to ride a jet ski, which led a lot of people on Reddit to speculate that that's just how the series ends, with Mobius on a jet ski in a high-speed chase down with the variant Loki. I'm kind of down to see that happening. Also, I wanted to point out that the librarian lady is probably the most librarian of a lady that I've ever seen. Does that make sense? She's textbook librarian with the glasses and the shrewd eyes. Yeah, I couldn't get enough of her. Anyway, here's what I was on the fence about. And when I say on the fence about, I don't really want people jumping down my throat, because I promise you I didn't hate it. It just gave me pause to ponder, that's all. The first thing was some of the jokes were a little cliche and didn't land. For example, there was that one scene where Loki was shushed by someone in the library for kicking up a ruckus, and he in turn turns and shushes the other person, and it's just a weird, drawn-out scene that was meant to be funny but wasn't. Again, just me nitpicking. Loki's outfit is still boring. He's still wearing really toned down blazers, or his cocky jailbird jumpsuit, or yeah, just like typical officer regalia, and I'm still chomping at the bit waiting to see his god outfit. Another thing was, remember in the first episode how that clerk with the glasses had no idea what fish was when Loki threatened to gut him like a fish? Yet in this episode we see Mobius eating a whole ass salad. So the employees of the TVA know what salad is, but they don't know what fish is. Have they not tried a fishy salad? What's going on? Also, when Loki is chasing down the variant, we see him using his powers for the first time, which is a little odd that he didn't bring it into play before. Because I get it, so long as he was in the confines of the TVA, he couldn't use his magic, but during the entire scene in Alabama where they're chasing down the variant, it's surprising to me that he held out for so long. 10 on 10 for that restraint, Loki. We're proud of you. So yeah, all in all, there's not much that I didn't like. Here's what I'm looking forward to in future episodes. Loki asks Mobius at one point what year exactly the TVA exists in, whether it's in the future, whether it's in the past. He doesn't really get an answer. It's just poo-pooed away. It's revealed that the fake Loki, or the lesser Loki, now knows how to find the timekeepers because a commander who was formerly under the spell or under the enchantment of the fake Loki was coerced into revealing that information, which is a little weird because as far as I remember, in this episode, the judge, Ravonna, pretty much the head honcho of the TVA, the person who Mobius has to run everything by, including involving Loki in these missions. By her own admission, she's the only one who has access to the timekeepers and who knows how to get in touch with them. So I'm not sure how a lower ranking commander was able to, even under enchantment, reveal that information to fake Loki. Nor do I know what fake Loki plans to do with that information because she's clearly not interested in seizing power. So we'll see. All in all, yeah, we're still trying to figure out fake Loki's goal of bombing the sacred timeline and splintering into these diverse timelines, but you know what? A 6.5, I'm gonna stick with that rating. I like it so far, and I'm very curious to see what happens down the road. Full disclosure, I haven't really been enjoying a lot of I'm gonna get crucified for this, but I haven't really been enjoying a lot of Marvel stuff recently, and this is the first property that I can get behind, that I can feel myself being even remotely enchanted by, pun intended. I am looking forward to episode 3, so I'll talk to you then. If you have any thoughts and comments, and just in general, if you want to vilify me in the comments below for my breakdown, feel free to do so. I will catch you very, very, very soon. See you in the next one. Bye.